Hallelujah. Your love makes me sing. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing. Your love is amazing, steady and unchanging. Your love is a mountain firm beneath my feet. Your love is a mystery, how you gently lift me when I am surrounded. Your love carries me. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing. Your love is surprising. I can feel it rising. All the joy that's flowing deep inside of me. Every time I see you, all your goodness shines through. I can feel the sky song rising up in me. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing. Your love is amazing, steady and unchanging. Your love is a mountain firm beneath my feet. Your love is a mystery, how you gently lift me, Lord, when I am surrounded. Your love carries me. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing. Hallelujah. 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 Your love makes me sing.
Morning, everyone. It's great to see you all. It's great to be together as we worship God. If you're a first-time guest, we're so glad that you chose to worship with us this morning. We look forward to singing, praying, hearing the word, and worshiping together.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Derek and I miss you all so much. We are praying for you. We are praying for our country. We're praying for all of our hearts to have peace. This morning, before we go into our worship, we wanted to take time to recite the Lord's Prayer together. Many of us grew up reciting the Lord's Prayer, whether you learned it in the King James Version like I did, or you learned it in a different version. It is the foundational prayer that all of us know. And so please join us together as Derek reads from the Lord's Prayer, and may you have a wonderful day of worship.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we have also forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. We love you guys. We know we're going to have a great worship together, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Hi, everyone. My name's Debbie Spivey, and I have the honor and the privilege of being able to be the youth administrator for the Greater Houston Church. And I know that during this pandemic, many of us have missed being able to be together to worship on Sundays, being in close proximity with one another. And I think even our children are lamenting it more than we are. So I just wanted you to know that we have some great things that we're planning right now, some unique ways for our kids to be able to connect, and I'll be able to let you know about those soon. But in the meantime, we put together a little video montage of some of our children's ministry kids sharing their thoughts with all of you.
Why do you have to stay indoors more often now?
Because of coronavirus, and it can get people very sick if you're outside without a mask. To stay safe and make sure other people stay safe too, because if not that much people are out, they can't get any sicknesses or get hurt.
Okay. Why do we have to stay indoors more often now?
Because of the virus going on, and also because we want to stay safe and stop it from spreading so that we can go to school again and not be quarantined. Because the government doesn't want us to get sick.
Okay, what do you miss the most about not having Kids Kingdom on Sundays? What do you miss the most?
Well, seeing my teachers and doing nice activities with them, and don't forget coloring. What's Kids Kingdom?
Church for kids on Sundays.
I miss seeing friends. I miss learning about God with all my friends. I miss learning the Bible by instead of by video. I've been missing it like eye to eye. I miss about family.
Yeah, what about family?
Family is who protects you.
What do you miss most about church? Miss Carol?
What are you most excited to do when we aren't quarantined anymore?
Go swimming and play with my friends in person.
Baskin Robbins. Get to go to Dave & Buster's events. And mostly being able to see my friends more.
I miss both school at church and school.
Okay.
And I also miss Bible study and midweek.
What are you most excited to do when we aren't quarantined anymore?
Go to Chick-fil-A.
What are you most excited to do when we aren't quarantined anymore?
Party!
Can you show us how to put on a mask?
Sure.
I like it. Yeah, it goes over your face, huh?
Here, buddy.
Can you try it on?
Sure.
Okay.
My hair's long.
Yes, your hair's growing.
Oh. Can you help me?
Ooh, look at that. Can you turn it over and put it on?
Okay.
There you go. Show us what you look like when you go out to the store with your mom or with grandma or grandpa. All right. Because you're on a mission, huh? Mm-hmm.
And what do you like to do at home the most?
The game bucket.
The game bucket?
Yeah.
What's the most fun thing you and your family have done at home?
Playing games with each other.
So what's the most fun thing we've been doing at home?
Playing outside, riding a bike. likes.
Okay.
Welcome to our quarantine from the Garcias.
You can do more stuff with them, like I can play more sports with my dad. I can practice the violin along with my sister and spend more time with my mom. Because I get to spend time with them and watch Harry Potter with them.
All right, Harry Potter.
That my family teaches me all about God every day.
And what's your favorite church song?
Louder.
Can you sing it?
Louder.
Good job.
And that's a game bucket.
That's your game bucket.
What do you miss the most about not having Kids Kingdom on Sundays?
I really miss Kids Kingdom.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Good morning, church. It's great to be together again for our digital service this morning. And just wanted to welcome everyone that's here with us this morning and thank you for joining us for our worship service. We're very encouraged to have you. Where to start, right? There's so much going on in the world. The last 2 weeks have seen, our country in full protest and somewhat disarray. And, I think even, different waves running through our churches and things like this that, I really believe in the long run are going to be super good for us and make us better and stronger and more in love with each other, I think, and prayerfully a greater witness for our God. So I really want to encourage us this morning. Hopefully you've already prayed this morning, but I pray that all of us can really listen with our heart, that we can listen for ourselves, At times in sermons, it's easy to go, oh, I hope so-and-so's listening, or man, I'm so glad he said that so those people would hear it, or something like that, and we've all been guilty of that. But I really want to encourage us this morning, just go, okay, God, what's your message for me? And I think we've had lots of times together. We've had congregational times together. We've had regional times together. We've had a 3.5-hour staff meeting recently where we just talked through all this stuff and how are we doing, even with each other, and how are we feeling about things. And I think it's been fantastic, albeit challenging at times. And so look, whatever your natural proclivities are and thinking about these issues, just this morning, try to put those aside. And just say, look, I just want to hear what God has to say for me this morning. And I think, one thing for sure is we all sympathize with people who've gone through these terrible things. Especially the family recently of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. And, we go through, we have sympathy for them. And I think, however meaningful expressions of sympathy are, they're somewhat limited, right? They don't usually produce sustained change, if you will. And sympathy, sends you cards and words of love and affirmation and perhaps meals for a week, which are all good and I think representative of Christ. But again, they don't typically turn into meaningful change. And so if we're to do what really needs to be done, we got to move beyond sympathy to what I want to describe this morning as solidarity. And solidarity causes one not simply to look as an observer, but to enter as a participant, and to try and do your best to be an agent of change personally. Solidarity is what caused white men and women, along with Jews even, to travel southward during the summer of 1964 for Freedom Summer. Solidarity is what caused many to converge on Selma and march to Montgomery to place pressure for voting rights, for blacks, African Americans, to be able to have voting rights. And again, I know we all think slavery just seems ridiculous to our modern mind, and we're just like, how could anybody have ever thought that was okay? It's bizarre to us, But I think it's easy to overlook, we had to have marches and protests and things of this nature just so that African Americans could vote in our country. And if you let that sink in, you just imagine if that was your race. It would, yes, it's long since passed and changed, but it would still cause hurt and maybe even anger at times, and I think it's just amazing to me that that's what it took for that to happen. And so I think we just need to have the heart to go, okay, what can we do? How can we move from sympathy to solidarity? Because it promotes sacrifice. It promotes the giving up of oneself for the benefit and promotion of another. And in many ways, when people ask me, what's your simplest, definition of Christianity? And oftentimes I'm like, at the core of Christianity, it's really about the other guy. We try to put the others ahead of ourselves. It's not always easy, but that's what Jesus commanded, demands, I believe even. And so we've got to get there. It can't just be a platitude. It's got to be there, right? And Jesus gives us such an incredible example of this kind of moving from sympathy, if you will, to solidarity and action in the parable of the Good Samaritan. And we can find that in Luke chapter 10, verse 25. We'll read all the way through 35. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. He wanted to test the Lord, right? So he said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "Well, what's written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." Right? Simple. Jesus says, do this and you'll live. Just go and do that, right? But he wanted to justify himself, I guess, because he wasn't living that way at that point in time. So he wanted to justify himself according to the scriptures. So he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going by down the same road. And when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was. And when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went up to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." And so, this parable is told within the context of a conversation with a Jewish official concerned about eternal life? And the answer is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. To love your neighbor as yourself. To love the other guy as much as you love you. To care about the other guy's rights as much as you care about your own rights. To care about the other guy's comfort and hope and expectations of a great future as much as you care about your own. As much as you care about your children's even. And so, trying to find the parameters of the latter, clause, the official asked about the identity of the neighbor. Jesus tells a parable, and in telling it, he doesn't identify the neighbor. He identifies the one who acts neighborly. He does it in such a way that demonstrates the differences between sympathy and solidarity. And so when you think about the Good Samaritan, right? The story is that of a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho, and we're, made to assume that this man is a Jew. He's attacked by robbers who they steal his belongings, right? They strip him of his clothes, they beat him, and they leave him on the street half dead. And a priest comes down the road soon thereafter, sees the man, crosses over to the other side of the street, keeps on walking. And then a Levite does the same. And the Levite is just from the tribe of Levi. They were the priest. All the other tribes, all the other 11 tribes, they were one of the 12 tribes of Jerusalem. And all the other 11 tribes were supposed to tithe so that they could make a living while serving as ministers, basically, for the nation of Israel. And so a Levite does the same thing. Sees what's happening, crosses the road, passes by. But a third person then is introduced, and it's a Samaritan. And Samaritans were kind of looked down on. It was kind of a racial thing in that point in time. They were Jews, but a different kind of Jew. So they were just looked down upon by lots of people, but certainly by the other Jews. And with the characterizing of this third person, the Samaritan, Jesus invokes the issue of race, like I said. And Samaritans were people of mixed blood. In fact, the term, if you think about, the term Samaritan was a pejorative. So it was kind of a bad name, what they called him, if you will. And they were, frowned upon by the Orthodox Jews. And so the Samaritan comes to where the man is. He sees him. He has pity on him. He bandages him up. He takes him out on his own donkey. He takes him to an inn. He takes care of him there. He pays for him to stay there, and he ensures his continued care by telling the innkeeper that he'll take care of any other cost that may be incurred upon his return. And so within the story, Jesus reveals what it means to respond to the moment by going beyond sympathy and into solidarity. And all three characters are presented with the same moment, right? The first two respond one way. The ways that they respond, keep the moment alive. And what I mean? Well, because had either of the two responded to the moment differently, there wouldn't have been an occasion, if you will, or a moment for the third character. The issue would have been handled, so the problem would have been solved. But because they responded the way that they did, the moment was present for this third character that Jesus wants to use to teach us all. And unlike the first two, the third character, the Samaritan, exhibited solidarity. So there are several characteristics of solidarity or neighborliness, if you want to put it another way. The first of which is coming close enough to realize what can't be understood from a distance. And so the particulars of this story are very important. The man is robbed, stripped, beaten, and left half dead. As both the priest and the Levite are walking, they see him from a distance, they cross the street, they keep walking. And one of the reasons why they do so is that from a distance, the half-dead man probably looked fully dead. From a distance, the situation probably looked terminal. From a distance, it looks like a case for the undertaker and not them. Their distance, their keeping their distance, causes them to make a judgment upon which they act. So they act off of a perception from a distance. It's not personal or proximal, it's from a distance. With Jesus not giving us the amount of time that passes between the priest and the Levite when they happened by, it's possible that they were very close together and the Levite even saw the priest and just did the exact same thing he did. Or if there was a little more time between them, maybe as more time passed, the victim looked even, deader, if you will, perhaps, because he'd been laying there even longer. And that's how he might have looked to the Levite. But what we do know is that they both make their decision from the perspective of distance and not from proximity. Neither of them come close to the man. Neither enters the man's neighborhood, if you will. Neither checks their distant assumptions with closer examination. The Samaritan, on the other hand, walks to where the man is. He doesn't base his actions on how the man looks from a distance. He comes to where the man is. And so by coming to where the man is, he sees more than just how the man appeared from a distance. He sees the man himself. He sees the man in reality. He realizes what he could not understand from a distance. You know, at a distance, he was probably prone to make certain judgments like the other two did. But now that he is where the man is, he sees the man as he is. And so we have to get close enough for solidarity. You know, God is telling us to move beyond making judgments from a distance and come in to knowledge through proximity. And I think, you know, I can look back to a time in our own lives where many years ago in 1994, Angela and I were asked to move into what was called in Los Angeles, what was called our South Central Ministry. It had previously been called the Cross and the Switchblade, and then changed to South Central because it was in South Central Los Angeles. And when we first came in, we were the only, you know, white ministry couple in the entire group of about 750 at that time. We, you know, our daughter was the only white child in our Kids Kingdom classes. And, you know, I remember just when we first came there and we were getting with everybody, you know, one-on-one and having talks, and a couple of people were very real with me. They just looked at me one time and they said, I'm kind of sharing my heart, and you know, they're like, you think you're better than me, don't you? And I was like, just totally taken aback. I was like, so I was gathered myself and I said, okay, I'm really sorry. I'm not sure what I'm doing makes you feel that way. And so we ended up having a great conversation. And, you know, as it turned out, that was just what they assumed that I assumed, just based on their own history and their own experience or their own, you know, tendencies, if you will, or whatever. And so we were ministered there. We ministered in South Central for almost 4.5 years. And, you know, we just were so close as a region, so close as a group of people. And I think, but it took that coming close. I don't think I could have ever understood some of the things that I understand if I hadn't been there. And if I hadn't been willing to get that close. And so there's got to be this, you know, this willingness, if you will. You know, God's calling us to move beyond making judgments from a distance and come into knowledge, you know, through proximity, through closeness, right? Through being together. There's got to be that willingness to enter the space, the neighborhood, the reality, and see things for how they are, and to some, right? And to see people for who they really are, for who those people are, right? And to know the issues that we're all dealing with, right? And so I think it's to refuse and to accept, you know, distant judgments or of others, you know, or values that people put on other people, you know. It's refusing to do that. It's coming close enough to see for yourself. And I believe, you know, by coming close enough, you know, the Samaritan saw that the man who looked dead from a distance was only half dead in reality. His entering the proximity, you know, the neighborhood, if you will, of the man enabled him to correctly and properly identify him. By coming close, he recognizes in the man what he knows about himself. While faint, you know, the man is still breathing. While weak, the man has a pulse. And so solidarity is coming close enough to recognize in others what you know to be true about yourself. What do I mean? Well, look, it's a risk coming close enough to recognize that all parents want the same thing for their children. Doesn't matter what race you are, what nationality you are. All parents want their children to be educated in safe schools, right? By competent and safe neighborhoods, by competent and caring teachers who value them and see them in terms of their potential. We all want the teachers to be that way with our children. And all people want to live in safe neighborhoods where there's neither the fear of crime by criminals or false assumption of you being a criminal. You know, and if you come close, you'll discover that every man wants to be respected as a man, and that every woman wants to be treated as an equal. If you come close, you'll discover that every young person wants a level playing field, right? And that's normal and natural. Everyone wants that. But like from a distance, the half-dead man looked to be dead to the priest and the Levite, causing him to cross the street and keep walking. You know, seeing what they believe to be a dead body from a distance, their concerns of ceremonial cleanliness override their concern about the man. And you can read all about those issues certainly in the book of Leviticus, but just how priests and Levites had to be careful and be wary about being around a dead body. They couldn't do it really. But not so with the Samaritan. Though the man looks dead from a distance, the Samaritan takes the time to move closer to the man. His concern for the man moves him closer. He reveals that solidarity entails being willing to value the life above what your normal excuses might be. So he moves beyond the normal excuses. I mean, solidarity is valuing the life in such a way that you overcome the normal excuses to proximity. You know, sometimes we feel like, well, you know, I don't really know them. They don't know me, or he's not one of my people, or she probably wouldn't understand me, or gosh, I don't know if it's really worth the hassle. What if they misunderstand me? What if they, and there's been a lot of that even, you know, in our church recently. And so we all have to be humble. We all have to be willing to hear people and understand they may not know everything, and understand they may not see everything the same way we do, without getting mad or furious and treating each other like we don't care them. That's just not godly. But guys, we have to be willing to take the risk. And we had a great midweek in our central region this past Wednesday night, and had lots of sharing, heartfelt sharing. You know, really the Spirit was moving. It was done in love, and it was done, you know, in just revealing different pains and hurts. And, you know, most of us cried because we felt it. You know, it hit us in that way. And then our challenge at the end of the night was to make sure you find someone that's not like you in the region and have a discussion, you know, because we need to move from a distance into proximity. And so we need to remove some of the excuses we might normally have and risk it, right? Because when you value the person, you're willing to overcome the normal excuses, the proximity, if you will. You move closer and see the person. You know, the Samaritan moves closer until he gets to where the man actually is. And now he's standing where the man is. He doesn't know where the people who beat the man are, right? They could be hiding in a bush. They could be down the street. They could be around a corner. And so it's dangerous, you know, for him to stop where the man is. He takes the risk of looking at the man, of really seeing the man. And in seeing the man, it brings out his compassion. He feels for the man. Seeing what he sees, feeling what he feels, and knowing what he knows, he determines that he's got to do something, right? You can't leave the man in his current condition. And that moment calls for him to respond. He moves to the man. He bends down. He gets on the level of the man, right? He probably gets some dust on his clothes and some dirt under his fingernails. And he probably gets some blood on his clothes as he bandages the man up and pours oil and wine on him. He puts the man on his donkey and takes him to the inn to take care of him. And guys, look, if we're going to really be truly close, because I believe in my heart of hearts we're brothers and sisters. I love everybody in this church. I don't know everybody as intimately as I know a lot of people, but I know almost everybody. And I'm so grateful for this church. You know, as a kid who, you know, when I was, you know, very young, my parents would take me places, and my sister and I, and my mom anyway, and leave us. It might be for 2 hours, it might be for 3 days. And then eventually, you know, they left us with my grandparents one too many times. My mom did for extended stay or extended time. And my grandparents ended up putting us in an orphanage because they were already raising one of my mom's other sons, my older brother. And they were like, we're too old. We can't raise 2 more kids. They need to be taken care of. And so they put us in an orphanage at that point in time. And from there, you know, my parents both were in prison at one time. My dad actually died in prison. My mom was in and out of jail and prison for a short stint. But then we went to the orphanage, and sometimes you go to foster homes from there, and there was physical and sexual abuse, you know, all those kind of things. And I think that, you know, it's just a matter of we got to be willing to know each other. We got to be willing to have, you know, compassion. And somebody had compassion on my sister and I and adopted us. And, you know, our life was a lot better from that point on. You know, but again, the Samaritan sees the man and it brings out his compassion, right? But it's going to get messy. You know, it's going to get messy when we're really getting in there, and it's going to take a while, you know, for us to get there. But if we just determine we're going to love each other no matter what, then we'll get through it all. And we will, as I said in the beginning, be stronger after all of this. We'll be a better church. We'll be more glorifying to God, and we will help more people know Jesus because of it. But like I said, he responds to that man. His solidarity, he's in solidarity. And that in turn, you know, involves taking on the risk of identification and making the sacrifice of schedules and privileges and expecting nothing in return. You know, solidarity is being willing to slow down and actually see one another. It's to look beyond appearance and desiring to know the other. It's to enter into the field of another's experience and try and feel them, right? It's to see as they see, do your best to see as they see, and hear as they hear, and feel as they feel. You know, it's to risk identifying with the other and become open in such a way that you're impacted. It's to become vulnerable to the point of being shaken into action prayerfully. You know, you can't let things remain as they are. You know, we all need to do something. We all need to become personally involved and decide to be the change, right? You know, Michael Jackson once said, I'm looking at the man in the mirror. I'm going to start with him. And, you know, I hope that we can do that. And certainly there are risks and there are rewards of solidarity. You know, if we're to be the church of which God is calling us to be, you know, there's got to be a solidarity that takes the risk of self-denial. The Samaritan gives up the privilege of riding on his donkey. He completely changes his schedule. You know, by putting the wounded man on the donkey, the Samaritan walks. True solidarity always comes with a cost. And the cost is often, you know, each of us giving up certain rights, if you will, and privileges. And it's a willingness to suffer discomfort on the behalf of another, It's to bend towards another. And so often we're not willing to do that. We want people to bend towards us. And there may be even a lot of people in our church right now that feel like, oh, we're bending too much this way, or, you know, and some maybe if we're not bending, but we're willing to bend towards each other. It's to get dirty with one another. It's to experience perhaps sometimes, you know, delay due to helping out other people. And you do it expecting nothing in return. You know, there was nothing about the man who was left half dead that would cause the Samaritan to ever think that he's going to get some kind of big return from this, that he's going to, you know, require a big reward from this man after he does this. You know, he simply did it expecting nothing in return. And that's the way we need to be. You know, our solidarity, his solidarity, you know, it's not about career expansion or networking or, you know, resume improvement, right? It's not about career expansion, if you will. I already said, you know, it's not about that, you know. There's no expectation of anything in return. No quid pro quo, right? No IOU. His actions are simply for the man, expecting nothing in return. And to me, that sounds like a disciple of Jesus. You know, solidarity simply seeks the improvement of a situation without looking for or expecting anything in return. I think the calculus of your actions are not what you'll get from it, but what you put into it, what you give to it. It's not how it benefits you, it's how you benefit it. It's not how you get benefited by the other person, it's how you benefit them. It's simply determining if there is something that you can do to make it better. And what you get from it is probably simply knowing that, hey, you did your best and you wanted to make it better and you did something prayerfully to make it better. What you get from it is simply knowing that you made it better. Your listening made it better. Your understanding made it better. Your stopping made it better. Your speaking made it better. Your concern and counseling made it better. Your love made it better. And the Samaritan does what he can to make it better. You know, the next day he gives the innkeeper 2 days' wages, tells him to look after him, and that when he returns, he'll repay him for any charges, that any extra expense. You know, so bandaging the man's wounds and taking him to the inn would have been enough. It was more than most would have done. Clearly, we see that from the story. But however, the Samaritan takes it another step. He makes provision for the man's long-term care, right? He isn't satisfied with a short-term or quick fix. You know, he's investing in the long term, and genuine solidarity wants things to be well, not just today, not just tomorrow, but also next week, next month, next year. And so authentic solidarity is concerned about the long term. The Samaritan committed himself to the long term. And in closing, let's read the last couple of verses of this excerpt. So if you go to verse 36 of Luke chapter 10. So after all this happens, then Jesus says, which of these three do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? And he said, the one who showed mercy or solidarity, if you will, asked Jesus, and Jesus said to him, you go and do likewise. So he said, which one? Jesus said, which one of these do you think showed mercy? And he said, man, or the one who showed mercy, right? And Jesus says, now you go, or which one was the real neighbor? The one who showed mercy. And Jesus said, now you go and do likewise. And with this, Jesus asked the official who was a neighbor, he asked him that question. He tells him to go and do likewise. And Jesus says the same to us, guys. In this moment, we're called to respond with solidarity, to go and do likewise. It's not just like the Samaritan, it's just like Jesus. Amen? He came in solidarity with us. He didn't remain some kind of cosmic spectator to our pain and to our suffering. No, but being equal with God. He thought, equality with God wasn't something to hang on to or be grasped. And so he made himself nothing. He took the form of a servant, according to the scriptures. Being made in human likeness of humanity, he came into proximity with you and I. He came into human flesh. He came as Emmanuel, right? As God with us. He was touched with the feeling of our infirmities. And he was, according to the scriptures, at all points, tempted in every way, just like us. And so he understood, he overcame those temptations. He understood why we might not always be able to do that. And so he saw us in our helpless state. And because of that, he took responsibility for our reconciliation. With there being, nothing that we could give in return. Nothing, that we would add to him, if you will. He gave it all up on our behalf. He became sin for us so that it might be wiped away. He became the sacrifice for us. He became the offering for us. He died for us all. He paid the price for us all. The old song says, Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left its crimson stain, but he washed it white as snow. And so, church, I just want to end with, let's be like Jesus. Let's stop trying to defend our position and trying to explain why this person's wrong or right and why they're being manipulated here and there. Let's just have compassion for one another. Let's just love each other the way Jesus did. The way Jesus loves us and the way the Samaritan loved this man. Let's come into proximity with each other. Let's show solidarity with each other for the simple case of loving one another and glorifying God. That's my only ulterior motive here, is that we become even more so the Church of Christ. I love you all. I'm so grateful for each one of you. I look forward to having more and more conversations and look forward to organizing our, cultural diversity committee and helping us to understand each other in even deeper and more meaningful ways in the future. We love you guys. You're awesome.
Thank you, Doug, for that message. It was definitely timely. I had actually been thinking about the Good Samaritan for a little bit. And, when you talked about moving beyond sympathy to solidarity, it was just a call to do more than pay lip service, to do what the Good Samaritan did, to not just pass by and say, keep warm and well fed, but to actually go, get out your comfort zone, take a risk, and go and help. And practically in the church right now, we've got a lot of needs. We've got a lot of people that are angry, a lot that are scared, a lot that are confused, and a lot that might not even feel much and don't know what to do. And I think it's definitely time for us to reach across to people that maybe we don't know as well, and maybe people that we do know well. And even if we think we know exactly how they think, just talk. And you'd be surprised at what you'd find and the needs that are there. So thank you very much. It does definitely remind me of a quote by a gentleman by the name of Claude Thomas Bissell. He says, risk more than others think is safe. Care more than others think is wise. Dream more than others think is practical. And expect more than others think is possible. It's definitely time to expect more than others think is possible when it comes to glorifying God. So thank you very much. So we do have our special missions contribution that hasn't ended. If you want to give some more, you can go to our website at greaterhouston.church. And right now we're up to $289,000, which is phenomenal. We still have a little ways to go to be able to reach our goals. So if you've got any more to give, if you are waiting for something to come through, then now is the time. One of the areas that we give to is the West Africa COVID relief. That's where some of the money goes, but there are definitely a lot of other areas that it goes as well. But one thing about that part is money can go so far in places like that. For example, $150 it was used to buy enough eggs for 110 children. I can't even imagine that. That's an incredible amount of food for just $150. There is a little quick video I want to show you of just a couple of kids that are just excited to say thank you. So those kids were from Abuja, Nigeria, and it's just awesome to be able to see where some of our money goes and just some of the little bit of the impact that it can have. We have another exciting thing, baptisms. I would love for everybody, when you get a chance, to call, text, do whatever, to welcome Logan Smith. He was just baptized. He's the son of Eddie and Christy Smith. And there was also a new couple that both got baptized together. That couple is Levi and Christy Strouder. So welcome to the kingdom of God. It's awesome that you're here. At this time, we're going to close out and have another song. So hopefully we'll get to see you guys next week. Take care.
2, 3, 4.
Looking at the world, you could sure feel small.
Looking at the world, you can sure feel small.
Thinking that you can't make a difference at all.
Thinking that you can't make a difference at all.
Don't sit back and say, what can I do?
Don't sit back and say, what can I do?
Start with what you see right in front of you.
Start with what you see right in front of you. Do what you can, make a difference. Spend the distance, shine your light.
Healing the hurting as we go.
We will bring hope,
Changing lives, telling the hearts feeling sorrow.
that tomorrow
It'll be alright. Hand joining hand all together. We're helping to bring hope worldwide.
shine your light. Oh, shine your light. Oh, shine your light.
Jesus said that we be the light of the world.
Jesus said we are the light of the world.
Set to bring hope to the boys and
Set to
girls.
bring hope to the boys and girls.
God can do a lot with a little faith.
God can do a lot with a little faith.
Shine a little light and it'll radiate.
Shine a little light and it'll radiate.
Do what you can, make a difference. Spend the distance. Shine your light. Healing the hurting as we go. We will bring hope. Changing lives. Telling the hearts feeling sorrow.
That tomorrow
It'll be alright. Hand joining hand all together. We're helping to bring hope worldwide. Shine the light. Oh, shine the light. Oh, shine the light. Oh, shine the light. The world needs hope. 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 Do what you can, make a difference. Spend the distance. Shine your light. Healing the hurting as we go. We will bring hope. Changing lives.